Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Church Solutions Podcast.
Hi, my name is Steve Lacy.
Do you like my puking on that? That's an old radio term. We were talking off microphone here about audio and stuff, and when people are talking like this, it's an old radio thing we used to call "you're puking on the air," and you're like over exaggerating. But I've got 20 years of radio, so I tend to puke, which is not the thing today. Back then in the 70s. It was an acceptable mode.
Everybody did that, right?
Everybody did that. We're broadcasting live.
Yeah.
And so now you don't hear that so much. I still hear some of it though there's some people on KLPX, the classic rock station that talk that way. But anyhow.
So today, in this holiday season, what are we talking about?
Well, it's very timely. It's funny you should mention holiday season. We're going to talk about de-stressing yourself for the holiday events coming up.
Yes. So,
and, we're talking primarily here Christmas Eve service or Christmas service if you're a pastor or, somebody that's really involved in your church. But you could use this for anything going on, some other stuff happening in your church or maybe even stuff at your home. I don't know.
This is probably the most stressful time of the year, especially depending on what, a lot of churches will do. Mm-hmm. Either children's Christmas plays or adult Christmas plays.
Oh, yes.
Plus, they're going to have 1,000 different services. I don't know, we don't quite have 1,000, but we're going to have just a ton of Christmas Eve services.
Yeah.
So, not to mention all on top of just the regular week of stuff. So
yeah, I think Easter is a big time, of course, as well. But this time of the year is Christmas holidays big, and the stats show that out there. I mean, domestic violence, unfortunately, goes up during this time of the year. I think we were just talking with Paul yesterday about people would get more DUIs during this time of the year, and then
he was. He said 80% of the DUIs all year long happen these couple of weeks or so.
Yeah, they're in holiday season. So there's a lot of stress out there for lots of different reasons. I mean, family issues, just relatives coming over, as you just had relatives because of your son's wedding. Right. But there's a lot of that stuff happens and it just adds up. And then if you're a pastor, if you're an associate pastor, if you're a key volunteer at your church involved in some of these things, it can be very stressful. It's the most wonderful time of the year, but it's also one of the most stressful times of the year, especially for those of us involved in ministry.
Right. So, and it not only affects just our well-being, it can affect our health as well. So you had some stats about this is the highest occurrence of heart attacks and heart-related deaths. And so,
I had my heart issue the third day of January. There'd be 4 years coming up that I had. Technically, they said I didn't have a heart attack, but I have a good friend that had almost the same exact procedure last year, or actually this year, and they told him he had a heart attack. So I don't know if I had a heart attack or not, but I had a stent put in because I had a 99% blockage, which I guess you were there.
I was there. I was the one saying, probably ought to go to the emergency room.
Yeah. It was right after putting up your Christmas decorations, so putting them up in your attic, which
handing them to me in the attic. Yes.
But I had an episode a couple days earlier playing basketball, so it wasn't you or your Christmas decorations. It was me, and I just kind of kept playing through it like an idiot. So a little free. This is free of charge here, folks. If you're having chest pains or having shoulder pains, or sweating, or having some stomach issues, some indigestion problems, maybe don't just ignore it because it could be heart related, as it was with me.
Yes.
And I almost died. Apparently they told me later, yeah, you almost died. So I was like, oh, okay. Wow. Thanks for that information. So
all right. So we are going to provide some tips for managing your holiday stress, right?
Yeah. And especially some of this is going to be related to Christmas church services and all that. So the first one would be to manage your expectations. In fact, I'm speaking this Sunday at my church, and I'm going to talk about expectations this Sunday. If you're involved in ministry, especially if you're involved in leadership, Christmas is a big time of the year for your church, and you want to have just a perfect church service, right? many times we have that high expectations. But the problem with that is there's no such thing as the perfect event.
There's not.
No, there's not. I mean, I'm sure. I don't know. Your kids just had a wedding just a few days ago. I'm sure there's probably a couple little things that probably didn't go as perfect, but you guys, I think, pulled it off pretty well. But for most events, there's always going to be something that kind of screws up. I mean, the streaming video that you did for your son's wedding, right? There was a little problem with that.
It was, yeah.
It wasn't our problem, but it was the Wi-Fi problem at the place where the wedding was. And so expectations, you really kind of need to manage your expectations. And look, there's a difference between goals and what you want to try to accomplish. All that stuff is important. But there are times you just kind of have to release it. You have to just kind of let it go and realize, you know what, it's not going to be perfect. We just need to do the best we can and not hold such high expectations that we, which we'll get to in a moment,
right.
if we don't reach what we think are the ideal expectations for the Christmas event, for the Christmas Eve service or whatever it might be, and we got to kind of let that go a little bit and realize there are just some things that are out of our control. There's so many different factors. I've done these for years. You have too. And there's lots of things that are out of our control. There's things that we can't control.
So maybe a good illustration of this. I remember we had a lady that was responsible for setting up the kind of snacks and hors d'oeuvres at our church, and we were meeting in high school at the time, so we would set up this area. And her expectations were really, really high for how this thing was set up. And I think it really stressed her out because people would come in and say, let's move that cupcake over from here to there. And she'd come back and go, no, that cupcake needs to be here for the right presentation. And it was just getting, she just had this vision of perfection for, this, non-essential thing, but she would get really obsessed.
Yeah, it's easy to do. And of course, if you're talking church productions and, you've got audio issues, you've got lighting issues, you've got, video issues that can creep up, let alone people that are supposed to be doing certain things, ushers and greeters and material you want to hand out. And sometimes something happens and something goes wrong. And the hope is that not too many of those things go wrong, but you just have to manage your expectations and realize, hey, you know what? It's out of our control. We've done the best we can. If the lighting isn't perfect, so what? All
right. So number 2 on our list here is go easy on yourself.
Yeah, and this kind of relates to what we just said here. I hold high expectations. I have a problem where I'm a pragmatic idealist, which is kind of a contradictory here, but I'm very pragmatic, but I'm also idealistic in a lot of things. And so it's a struggle at times, and I have to remember, you know what? Nobody's perfect. That includes you, that includes me. And sometimes you just have to have some compassion on yourself if you screw up. If you make a mistake, you just got to say, you know what? Did the best I could. I'm going to just be compassionate. I mean, let's face it. I was just watching our church does this at the movies, which many churches do now. Your church does it. Years ago we did it, and it's just taking some movie clips from a popular movie and using some illustrations from those clips to point out a message that we can get. And in this particular movie I'm using, it's Clark Griswold, and it's National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. Came out 30 years ago. Have you seen it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
There were like 3 of them that came out. His vacation to Disney World, his vacation to Europe, and Clark Griswold's a character. He's a bumbling character, got a good heart. But
Dan Aykroyd?
No, it's actually Chevy Chase.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right. Close, but not quite. And in this particular, there's a scene in the movie where he puts up 25,000 lights on his house. and he's got these high expectations, and he's got, this is going to be the best Christmas ever. We're going to, it's going to be wonderful. We got the family, and he brings the whole family out, and there's relatives coming from out of town, so it's a stressful situation for everybody. And, they go to do the lighting ceremony, so to speak, and he goes to plug the lights in and nothing happens. Nothing, they don't work. And where am I going with this? So one of the things was, I don't know, I'm off on a tangent. One of the things that he's hard on himself, right? I did everything. I can't believe this. So I checked every bulb. And his wife, and even his kids, who can be kind of, typical kids, they were very compassionate to him. And his wife especially, like, oh, Clark, it's okay. I'm sure we'll figure it out. It will be all right. They had compassion on Clark Griswold. And sometimes we need to have compassion on ourselves when we miss the mark. God has compassion on us. We need to have compassion on ourselves.
All right. And then next, related to this, going easy on others.
Go easy on others. And again, we have high expectations, especially if you're involved in ministry. We expect our volunteers, our fellow volunteers, or our staff to fulfill these, expectations, usually very high. And again, I think it's good to have high standards. I think it's good to have goals. But again, people fail at times. And so, you know what? We've got to have compassion on ourselves, and we need to have compassion on people when they miss the mark. And look, if they're being irresponsible, you can deal with that later at another time. But most of the time, people are trying their best, and they goof, they mess up. And so, got to go easy on others.
And then next on our list here is prepare for problems.
Yeah, so we touched on this earlier with all the things that can possibly go wrong, depending on the type of service you have, Christmas Eve service or Christmas service or whatever it is you're dealing with an event. There's lots of things, there's lots of factors, lots of elements that are usually involved in things. And again, it could be technical issues, could be practical things, equipments fail, people get sick and they don't show up for some reason. You might have some financial problems, something you were counting on spending some money for this event, and all of a sudden the money's not there anymore. It's used on something else. And so one of the things I try to do is I try to prepare myself for problems and realize when I'm going into anything, I have high expectations, but you know what? There's going to be some possible problems. Things aren't always going to go right. And so I try to prepare for that emotionally, mentally, as a church administrator myself, and also realizing, you know what? Okay, if this doesn't work, maybe we'll try this, a plan B or a plan C, because things inevitably go wrong, and it's usually out of our control.
You have in our notes about imagining the worst case scenario, and that's we do that at our church. I mean, somebody's got to think through that. So, for example, we have monsoons here, and we'll have a pre-service kind of huddle with everybody that's going to be involved in the service. And, the service director will say, if we lose power to the building because of a lightning strike, because we're in the middle of this monsoon season, this is what we're going to do. And so that's a worst case scenario where we're going to dismiss and orderly leave, in the dark. So,
Well, we're here in sunny Tucson, Arizona, but a lot of our viewers and listeners are dealing with some weather conditions even as we speak, right? Snow, blizzards.
It's good to just know and think ahead that so when those super stress situations come, you go, oh, I know what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to just, we're not going to try to do the rest of the service without any power. We're going to just leave in the dark. So, and who has flashlights? And,
Right, use your phone or other. But, and getting back even to Christmas Eve, if you're back east somewhere and there's a blizzard coming, you obviously want to, you want to keep an eye on the weather. And then, if something's going to come up that may be potential problem, you either are going to have to dismiss the service, or you could use a streaming company and maybe you could stream it. If you have to close the church, maybe you could stream something. I don't know. Do you know any good streaming companies?
I don't know.
I'm not sure if I know any There's one thing called streamingchurch.tv. Anyhow, so what I'm getting at is it's you don't have to obsess over it. You don't have to go, oh my God, what if this happens? What if that happens? I'm not saying you do that, but I do think you have to think about some things.
All right. So and next on our list here is stay positive.
Moving right along here.
Yeah, we got a few to get through.
A lot of times I find myself, if a couple things are not going well, I can get myself in this funk of, oh, now what? Now what's going to happen? I can't believe that's just like this. That's so typical. And sometimes you have to just stop it and you have to check yourself and you have to say, you know what? There are things that happen that are out of our control again. And sometimes we have to remind ourselves, you know, it's not in my control, but God's in control. And what matters most in this particular case would be the message of Christmas. What's the message? You know, it may not be a great functioning, high functioning service. There may be things going wrong, but remember what the message is. God's love, God's peace to the world. You got to really stay positive, even if it's difficult.
Yes, exactly. So then we got a list of some practical things you can do to avoid these, personal things you can do.
Yeah.
So,
personal practical exercises is what we call them to help you de-stress during this season, during these events. I've got just a few things I've put on here. I'm sure there's things we could add, but there's a few here.
Right. So number one on this list is exercise or going for a walk. You have going for a walk, but I think exercise, I know that, I mentioned my son just got married, or you mentioned my son just got married over the weekend, and the day of the wedding, we'd gone through, she was just super stressed because for lots of reasons, plus she was bringing, family gets together and her parents are divorced, and so there was really awkward stuff going on, but you got to include everybody, so she was just super stressed. And then so the day of the service, learned she'd gotten up early and she was out for a run, so she was, and I was like, that's a great idea. All this stress going on, we got the rest of the day that's going to be super stressful. Everyone's hitting her up for, hey, where did the flowers show up? They didn't show up when they were supposed to, and they're all calling her. And so, going for a run or getting exercise will really reset you and kind of help if you're in the middle of some stress.
And again, people back east, it's, might be 10 degrees outside. That might not be practical for you, but maybe there's something else you can do. Do some push-ups or something. I don't know.
Hey, you can. Yeah, it depends on how. Yeah, there's treadmills. My brother has an indoor, what's his name? Michael Phelps swimming pool, a lap pool thing that lives in his garage area that he, it's just a swimming pool built for one person. So
interesting. There's some things you can do.
He's in Montana, so yes, it will be freezing right now.
People going to think I'm silly, but this really helps me. I used to go outside and throw a ball against the wall. I have like a wall around my house. Out here in Arizona, it's very common to have these little walls, adobe walls, and I used to throw a ball sometimes, just try to hit the target, and I would do it for maybe 20 minutes or so, just to de-stress.
That's the baseball in you, right?
That's the baseball. But my son a couple years ago bought this. And it's really, you've seen it. It's a basketball hoop. It's an indoor thing, and it used to have the deal where you would count your baskets. It was electronic, but the electronic thing broke like 2 months after we bought it. But we still have it in there. It's really big and awkward. And he bought it for me, but we all play it, goof around. And it doesn't fit in our house, but we have it in our dining room. You've seen it. You walk in, there it is. It's like a dinosaur sticking out. But it's still there, and I still use it. I will go and shoot baskets.
To de-stress, huh?
I just de-stress shooting baskets.
All right, so we get a bunch more, or a few more here. Should we just skip a few, or?
Well, we've got about 3 or 4 more minutes left, so let's just talk about them.
So,
go ahead.
One next on our list is breathe. And I think you need structured breathing.
Yeah, breathe, take deep breaths. Most of Americans, a lot of people, we just don't breathe right, and we get stressed, and so we have short breaths. And just take just take a few breaths for a minute or so. Just breathe deep and just try to. And scientifically, this is proven scientifically that it will lower your blood pressure if you just take some breathing exercises. Sounds silly, but you can do it wherever you're at.
And I know this next one on our list, my wife does just about every day, and she'd probably be a major crank without it, but which is creating quiet spaces within your day.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's either she'll do her quiet time and quiet spaces. She gets up at 4 every morning, and she doesn't have to get up at 4, but she wants to get up at 4 so she can have her time alone where there's, I'm not bothering her, and there's nothing going on, and it's dark outside.
Yep.
And get some coffee and
Yeah, I don't get up at 4 anymore, but I get up usually around 5. But yeah, create some time, your quiet time, your prayer time. But even if you're not praying, if you just have a quiet space where, and again, it all varies for who you are and what you want to do. But for me, I just like being quiet. And I have a podcast I listen to for just a few minutes, not very long, that has to do with really kind of a meditation and a little thought for the day thing. And if you can do that to start your day off, that helps a lot. But, you can also create quiet spaces. You have to be intentional, but you can do it during your lunch break. If you're able to, like if you're a pastor or something, you might shut the door in your office in the afternoon maybe, and just take 15 minutes and take the phone off the hook, so to speak. Shut your own phone off, your mobile phone off, and just de-stress, relax, spend some quiet time. It will make a big difference.
All right. So you mentioned the next one on our list already was turning off your phone.
Yeah, the phone. The phone. Oh my gosh, the phone. I have 2 jobs, and I know you get stuff all the time too, and it's just sometimes you just got to shut the phone off.
Yeah. And music.
It can be a great de-stressor. Music. There's lots of music out there today, and again with apps and stuff, Spotify and Pandora, or if you're just old-fashioned and you got yourself a vinyl record or a CD. Actually, vinyl records are coming back, and put some music on, and some great praise and worship music. There's, even if you're not, if you have something that's not praise and worship, something you like, and get your mind off it.
All right. So these are ways to de-stress and kind of recharge your batteries and kind of pull out from the situation.
Yep. And the last one is just kind of a summary. Do something that you enjoy. So, it might be watching your favorite TV show. Maybe it might be, maybe have a snack that you enjoy. Just have mindful eating. You don't want to be eating all the time and, gain 50 pounds, but do something you enjoy.
That makes sense.
If you can do it enough, it will help de-stress you. So that's pretty much all we've got. But folks, it's just the holidays are here, and if you're involved in ministry, it can be really stressful and crazy because you got people and all these expectations on you and on other people. So that's what this is all about. So we do this podcast. We usually do technical stuff because we do streaming video and mobile apps, but occasionally we like to address some of these topics that hopefully will help you involved in ministry and help your life become a little better.
All right. Sounds great.
All right.
It's a wrap.
It's a wrap. So if you have any input on this, we'd love to hear from you. As usual, send us an email, support@streamingchurch.tv. That's one of our companies, streamingchurch.tv. And we'd love to hear from you. If you want something that you want to add to this, that'd be great. If you think we're crazy, that's okay. But we'd love to get your feedback on this. And we'd love it if you subscribe to our podcast. And we are done. He is Steve Lacy. I am Phil Thompson. This is the Church Solutions Podcast. Thanks for listening. And we hope that you have a very Merry Christmas. I think we have maybe one more podcast maybe before Christmas, if we can get to it. But if we don't hear from you or you don't hear from us, we hope that you have a blessed Christmas and a Happy New Year. And we'll catch you next time on another edition of the Church Solutions Podcast. Take care.